Okay, so this lesson is about developing or understanding rates of change, and in particular developing a table based on rates that have been provided. Now, firstly, I'm actually trying a new method by doing this on a tablet as opposed to the whiteboard, but the key formula for today's lesson is just understanding that the rate is the change in y over the change in x. Now, we've done this in previous lessons, how much has the litres in the tap or the shower, I think the question was, changed, and we looked at, you go 30 minus 20 and that means the change has been 10, for example. So it's about understanding the change in stages, and the change in one divided by the change in the other will give us the rate. So that's where we're building up here. So when presented with this situation, a car uses the petrol at a rate of 2.5 litres per kilometre. Now, the thing to understand here is that if we look at this section here, the bit to understand here is that the first bit that is given will be the y, and the second bit will be the x. And look, we historically put x as the top column over here. Let's see if I can change the colour. Over here, so we'll put the x at the top and the y as the second. So just understanding that when it is given over here as litres a kilometre, the first thing mentioned, the L in this case, will be y, and the kilometres will be the x. Okay? So if we then have a look at the formula that's down the bottom here, rate equals the change in x divided by the change in y, we can then start to put this together. So if I go over to the next slide, I've rewritten the formula, rate equals the change in y over the change in x, but in the question it told us what that rate was. It was 2.5. So we can then just put in that. We've been given the answer. Now, if we then go have a look at the table that's here, you can see that all the values for x have been given. Okay, so across here. So what we actually then need to do is to create a formula that gives us an answer for y, keeping in mind that we actually have all the values for x. So basically, I need to have a formula that means y equals something. Okay? So that's what we're going to rearrange here. And again, this is why we spent so much time on the on algebra, is that I'm hoping that you guys can rearrange this equation quite reasonably to make y the subject. So what can I do? I can actually multiply both sides by x. That will get rid of this x there and leave an x on the other side, and I'll end up with 2.5 x is equal to y, and I might just rewrite this so it looks a bit nicer. So y equals 2.5 times x. So remembering that y equals 2.5x, given that I've got this whole row of x, I can start putting it in. What is 2.5 multiplied by 0? Well, that's still going to be 0. What is 2.5 multiplied by 10? It's going to be, 25. 2.5 multiplied by 20, and I'll get 50. So you can actually then, you've got a formula that you've created down here that we can then reuse to complete the table. Okay, so that's the key learning here. This example, by the way, is on page 297. Now, if I go, I'm going to have a look at the next one. Current flows through wire at a rate of 5 columns per second. Now, columns is just a unit of measurement when it comes to electricity. You actually don't need to understand what a column is in order to work this out. Now, based on our learning from the previous question, the first unit of measurement used can be Y, and the second one is X. Okay? So if we then come down to the table that I've written here, see, seconds is X and columns is Y. Now, the key difference from the previous question is that in this question we've got all the values for Y and we don't have one for X. In the previous one we had all of them for X and not for Y. So, rate is the change in Y divided by the change in X, and I've put in the columns and seconds, so there it is there, columns is Y and seconds is X. Columns is the change, the rate is the change in columns divided by the change in seconds. So, the rate was 5 equals Y over X. But this time we need to create a formula that makes X the subject. Now, remember when I want to move this X here, I want it to be the subject. Now, hopefully you guys remember the rules that I can just swap these straight over. So, I can then end up with X equals Y divided by 5. Okay? So that's just the straight algebra that we've been doing, nothing new. So X equals Y divided by 5. X equals Y divided by 5. Now that we've got a formula that we can use, we can actually apply it to this table and just go along. So, in the first example, which is this one here, Y is equal to 50. So what is Y divided by 5 means that X is equal to 10. I'm looking at this one now. 100 divided by 5, 20, 40, and 100. Okay? Okay, now the work for this is on page 299. There is also a bit in the question that might ask you to graph the table once you have it, but I don't think I need to go through that. I think once you've got an X and a Y value, you guys are okay at plotting those. So it's A to F on page 299. There's a couple of questions, particularly 1 and 2, are almost identical to the work that we've just done, so make sure that you definitely have a crack at 1 and 2. But I'd like you to develop that further into the rest of 8F. But that's all there is in this particular lesson.